Hello, this is a continuation of the Garrett Railroad documentary I had done in some previous videos. This is some additional information I got about the shops from the Mount Clare Museum in Baltimore, Maryland, where the B&O and C&O Museum is. It also happens to be the place that in the old days where the locomotives and, well, basically it was a home base for the Baltimore and Ohio in Baltimore, Maryland, called Mount Clare. It was a huge works. They built most of their locomotives there and did a lot of their own work. But now it's a museum and contains a very large collection of historical railroad stock and things about the B&O. This is some additional facts I had found that the head archivist sent me an email a few weeks ago, or, well, actually it's been a couple months now, but here are some additional facts about the Garrett shops. At Garrett, 95.27 cubic tons of masonry were laid for the foundations of the boiler house and steam heating boiler vault for closet at the shops. Ash pit and manhole in the sewer, and 4 square yards of pavement laid in the boiler room. Extensive improvements were made at this station for building cars. Well, here, I'll just let you read it. Pause it if you want to read it, but these were some additional facts that were sent me. These were from the annual reports in Baltimore and Ohio magazine. So pause it if you want to read them, but they are interesting. Now, one thing I found interesting was, it says new machinery in the annual report. I believe it was from 1890 maybe. Was that they took some of the equipment from the Buckeye car shops and installed it at Garrett. It looks like they only had one steam hammer in the shops, which is kind of surprising. Usually blacksmith shops for the railroad had 2 or more, and some forming machines. Of course, you know, this was an earlier day and age, and the Garrett shops weren't nearly as big as the Fort Wayne shops for the Pensy, or Mount Clare, for that matter, a lot of them, but it still played an important role as a midway point between Chicago and Willard, or what was called Chicago Terminal back then, now called Willard Yard or Willard Terminal in Ohio. This molding machine was, I believe it was used for foundry work for making castings, putting the molds together in this number 130 double RM exhaust. It was an exhaust fan. It was a double exhaust fan is what it means. As you can see, it says it was in use in the Zanesville shops, and then part of them from the Buckeye car shops I read. Also, here's this one. Just give you a little bit of time to read it. I figure I would disseminate this information, and I do have their permission, as long as this isn't used for commercial purposes. But today was 3 years ago that I rode the Wabash Cannonball back in 2015, so it's kind of what got me started on railroad history and the curiosity of learning about my own town's railroad heritage as a shop town. Garrett was also, as I may have previously mentioned, the last place that steam engines were used on the B&O. And this just shows some of the different things. That's from page 79 of an annual report. Now I did find one additional thing from the original Baltimore and Ohio days of Garrett. In the community center they have the old giant bench that used to sit in front of the depot that people would actually sit on. It sits in the community center, but it's really one of the last bits of the original Baltimore and Ohio, or any of the elements of the old buildings. And I think they might have a clock from the old depot, but I could be wrong. But I know they have the old bench. Let's see. And this just talks about improvements in the water stations. Oops. That's from 1894. Make sure I actually got it. Talked about the improvements, the coal chutes in Garrett. And then this talks about the ash pit. The original one, they made it bigger over the years. That's 1895. It was 126 feet long. And it was made with I-beam stringers resting on iron pilings and iron bends. I'll speed this along. Another interesting note was one character that, or one figure that appeared in multiple magazines as far as blacksmithing goes, was James McSweeney. He was for a time the master blacksmith at Garrett in the blacksmith shop, but he was promoted to the Mount Clare Works, the primary shop of building for the Baltimore and Ohio, as I said, Mount Clare, Maryland, or Baltimore, Maryland, and then he transferred back to Garrett. He also wrote a bunch of magazine articles on iron railroad locomotive frame welding when they would get cracks, how they would forge weld them together, the usage on thermite. Yes, even back in 1908 they were using thermite welds. As strange as that may seem. It also talked about shop efficiency, and there's various things in the newspaper I've ran across when searching the internet on Google with his name. Talked about his wife. He died in 1933, retired after the Garrett shops closed in 1926, that is. And this just shows how much they spent. Okay, that's it for that one. And this was, whoop. Okay. We back the train up here.